few years ago, I started watching the works of Studio Ghibli, in order as best I could, until I eventually threw caution to the wind and watched whichever piqued my interest. Nausicaa was the one I loved the most, right beside Kiki's Delivery Service. Stories which rekindled my love for animated features, regardless if they are as endearing as a Ghibli flick or as artistically vague as Oshi's Angel's Egg. But there was one I could feel in my gut that could be something I really like. It was a tale I didn't know how it would end, and I couldn't have been happier. The powerful themes I first saw and loved in Nausicaa had now formed a brutal truth in the beautiful story of Princess Mononoke. When I make these videos, I usually have an idea of what I want to discuss or reveal in my personal perspective, which for Mononoke is the duality of grey conflict. But to get there, where do I even start? Well, in case you didn't know, the film is gorgeous. Not surprising from old mate Miyazaki or the previous of his work, but there is something here that feels more alive in the illustrations of the world it paints. The characters are presented in these stunning wide shots that help highlight great vast landscapes which also offer a unique perspective on them compared to any of the insurmountable odds they may face. From when Ashitaka first leaves his village to the arrival at Irontown, the battles on the hills, and the final chase of the Nightwalker. Part of this ability to show more and in such impressionable ways is due to the film's immense budget. At the time of production, Princess Mononoke was the most expensive animated film ever made. A budget starting at 2 billion yen went up to about 2.35 billion at the end of production. Miyazaki himself said he didn't care if the studio went bankrupt, which in my humble opinion is the most gamer shit I ever heard a director say. Besides looking pretty as fuck, making nature appear not just natural but also aesthetically pleasing is what can draw an audience in. To understand why our characters in this lush scenery care so much about it, we need to show the audience how stunning it is. The first time the film does this is when Ashitaka carries the wounded man into the cedar forest and comes across the Kodama. They themselves are so tuned to the life of nature that they are semi-translucent, emitting the amazing glow found primarily in cell animation from this era. Transposed upon the magical yet still watercolor backdrops, it's hard not to be charmed by every shot of the film no matter how brief it is, especially when each moment adds to the story and characters. Care and detail was afforded by this ballooning budget when also using 5 different art directors for specific areas of the film's story. Something I learned upon reading from Raina Dennison's Understanding Studio Ghibli's Monster Princess is that one art director would focus on something like the daytime scenery and another the night, a practice not very common in the animation industry at the time. Yet when it was supposedly meant to be the old cat-loving animator's last film, I can see the wish to go all out and make every frame a moving piece of art, which it is. What I found not so easily discernible at first was the subtle use of CG animation mixing with the studio's expertise in traditional hand-drawn 2D. It's unique when looking at the very literal divide of the two worlds showcased in the film itself. The openness to not sacrifice the old skills the studio had fostered, which Miyazaki deeply cares for, but at the same time, learn and create with new modern tools. It is not unlike, in my eyes, what the main character of Ashitaka embodies as the unexpected mediator between two warring factions. Speaking of which is the core conflict that I found so compelling and rewarded me with a much more nuanced and brutal truth I hope to discuss with you. In a tale centered on warring factions and the approaching death of both spirits and humans, every side is right. Despite being a massive inspiration for the GOAT Jim to create his Na'vi planet Pandora, Princess Mononoke doesn't utilize the exact same man versus nature conflict plot structure. Forest is evil. Turns out, maybe not. Dude, humans might be the bad guys, bro. The forest is now in danger. Dude, we have to stop these guys. Don't get it twisted. That's powerful, and I do like stories like that. Because militarism and colonialism is fucking cringe, and flying Ikran with your Na'vi bro is pog. Mononoke, however, is adverse to painting a simple shade of black and white, but through motivation and character perspective offer varying degrees of grey, showing how our choices affect others and the environment around us. Basically, the film never takes an outright stance that all human characters are just evil, and that the forest is a helpless little infant, but in some cases, that can be said of both of them. Before I mentioned how the art of the film highlights the scope of nature, but the opposite is also true for the man-made landscapes. Miyazaki presents Irontown as this fortress standing amongst a graveyard of tree stumps and dry dirt, but only after entering this hub of independent industry that we see there are different colors which bloom in the night. The forge in its towering shadow can be at first seen as just a red herring for the negative effects of industrialism on nature itself. But when Ashitaka eventually enters the fiery abode, we hear the singing of the working women who happily fan the flames of what can be their future. With great sound design and characters, the film expresses the beauty and care that comes from the opposite side. When we spend time with the people of Irontown, we begin to see a very human and relatable goal for the residents of the refinery to create a better self-sustaining life for themselves. We don't meet a large host of warriors, soldiers, aristocrats, businessmen, and government bodies, but minorities with diverse life experiences, working women, and the unfortunate souls of disease. Another work would paint the coming destruction of humans as being this cold, brutal, and very sterile combination of colors, but instead, the story's willingness to understand is the viewpoint we must take, because that is Ashitaka's. He restrains his anger and attempts to learn and understand the people around him. The women who work for days and shifts admit that while it's hard work, it is better than being in a brothel. Here, they at least are equals. This is the first way in which Miyazaki subverts any preconceived notions you may have of the humans at play, treating the groups with a bit more nuance and explaining why this faction is led by Eboshi. Lady Eboshi is the closest thing in the plot you would call antagonist. Unfortunately, she does some bad shit. She abandons part of her community in battle for greater gain, justifying it is for the sake of them all surviving in the long run. She almost dooms everyone in the valley by attempting to kill the very life of the forest itself and is clearly driven to make large social change through conflict. She has the best of intentions for her people, but their lives are at the detriment of that powerful ambition to lift them up by any means necessary. From her origins as an entertainer and then taken by force as a wife by a pirate, Eboshi sees the cruelty of the world and the unfairness of women in it. So she strives to create her own world for people like her. There is compassion inside that harsh, stern drive. Eboshi is not so dissimilar to Moro, the wolf god and San's adoptive mother. Both are strong, powerful matriarchal figures in their group or communities. Both are headstrong as they walk a path toward violence in the hopes of protecting what is dear to them. The difference is what they are willing to give up and accept. These characters are needed in stories centered around two groups that mirror each other. They reflect the general opinion and motivation of the greater whole, but usually their intentions are steeped in selfishness, whereas these two goated queens are in fact trying to protect what they care for. They just do so ruthlessly. Despite her harshness, Eboshi gains the respect of her community because of what she has done for them, and that compassion is realized when Ashitaka meets her lepers. The men she has crafting and smithing the guns are sick, bandaged souls who all have leprosy. The transmission of the disease itself and the stigma of its treatment is what make people who are host to it outcasts of their communities. Hence the line in The Dark Knight, "Batman, my G, these motherfucking cops are gonna cast you aside like a leper, cuz?" Eboshi clearly has a large amount of empathy for people that are not cared for by society, despite her demeanor toward nature and all of its denizens. Her practicality toward cutting down trees and causing destruction on the home of San and her family is what she has to do. It doesn't excuse her choices, which Miyazaki makes clear. To me, this is why she feels reflected in her counterpart Moro. Moro both resents and sees beauty in the lives of humans, at least the human part of her adoptive daughter. Her experience with humankind has only ever been conflict and negative encounters as her home continues to be ravaged and defiled by them. Her willingness to tolerate a select few humans is the thing that separates her from the Irontown leader. This acceptance of a human presence is evident in the fact that she raised San as her daughter and allowed Ashitaka's life to be present at her behest. Moro fights knowing full well the likely result of her clan's demise is based on the sheer mass of humans and their weapons of warfare. Yet doing so anyway shows her perspective as a god, that by the forest's will, it is her time. Moro sees that there is an end and beginning to all life, when she is infected with a bullet wound that turns others of her kind into raging demonic forces. She accepts this fate and only laments that she won't be able to kill Eboshi before her end. Moro in a way welcomes the hatred of the neighboring humans as if it is what she expects from them, to be selfish creatures who act as if they do know any truth in this world. Yet her conflict and wish for death to wash away immense pain of those she cares for is confronted when Ashitaka is the first human she has met that San also approves of. So on death's door, she relents and asks for Ashitaka to save her daughter. Moro's performance next to San and Ashitaka's is my favorite. Her voice, even though passed through an ethereal mixing, has a very wise and deep rasp to it. A creative choice to cast a male to play her, but something about it sounds so androgynous, which makes perfect sense as Moro's voice is provided by famous Japanese drag queen singer Akihiro Miwa. All you fucking grifters watching are gonna get mad to know that the badass wolf is a fucking queen. Get it twisted, bro. Miyazaki loves women and it's Pride Month, bitch. By extension, San, our titular heroine, is not unjustified to feel the same rage toward this kind she shares the face of. Her biological parents abandoned her when confronted by Moro and in trying to save themselves sacrificed their own newborn. So naturally, she shares her mother's disdain for humans and their seemingly easy disregard for others. Their typical selfishness. Even as I recount this now and think about the effects we, as a race, have had and continue to inflict on the world around us, and each other, how can one blame her for feeling this way? Don't forget that it is the effects each group of humans have on the other that make the ensuing conflict all the more human-born. The whole conflict between Eboshi and Lord Asano is based on the iron she has found in the valley. Despite these examples, Miyazaki is not creating an allegory of which to specifically look and place upon another situation we see in our lives. So if anything, his work is one of applicability, where we as the viewer can place upon our life experiences and recall the similarities to them. A byproduct of not just great storytelling, but great art. Through these moments, the film can reflect our own reality in kind. So, I wonder, how often when you see hatred, the more commonplace and natural it becomes? The irony the film poses is that hate is what ultimately kills us. The disregard for nature and the destitution we grant people are one and the same. Princess Mononoke's plot begins after the boar god Nago, infected and tormented by the lodged bullet in his flesh, is slain by Ashitaka. Yet not until that same infection takes hold in the prince's arm. Our knowledge of this condition being linked to the emotion of hate is not revealed until we learn from how the wound was made. The weapon of man and the hurt it inflicts is symbolically registered through the gods of the forest, showing that this weapon's power is enough to kill great beasts, but in doing so creates a far more destructive entity which returns the pain back in kind. The disease of hatred and its infection acts like a rebound. You hit first thinking it's the blow to end the conflict, but one will surely be returned to you twofold. This is why Ashitaka's is the perspective we primarily follow through the film. His struggle to combat not just the disease that is taking hold of him, but also the hate which permeates the valley feels both impossible and unlikely to end peacefully. Yet his optimism and willpower of not giving in to the easy raw emotions that distort our reasoning is like the small change needed for others to collectively believe in great change. When Ashitaka tries to free one of San's wolf siblings against the defiance of a man from Jiko's company, he demonstrates a way in which we can show compassion in the face of indifference. That compassion is what gives the villagers of Irontown the confidence to believe that although this wolf god is an enemy, it need not be if it trusts the man who we also do. What makes it more compelling as opposed to coming across righteous or morally placing itself on a pedestal is that showing compassion is not always easy, and sometimes it never guarantees success. Unlike his older cousin, princess counterpart Nausicaa, Ashitaka is not adverse to violence as a way to stop or protect others if he has to. The power which helps him to divide the opposing forces and prevent further death is the very thing hastening his own. Even though the prince is not transformed by the curse because of his heart remaining devoid of true unbridled rage, he is not immune to its grasp. Yet by the end, his restraint and self-sacrifice was worth it. Despite this, San is not so convinced that humans will choose a different path, and the pain they have inflicted upon her and those she loves is still fresh. She can't move past it. But despite those reservations, she feels love for the first human who has ever shown her kindness and understanding. Tensions and past hate is not dismantled so easily. It takes time, compromise, cooperation, and most importantly, eyes unclouded by hate. So perhaps all she may need is time. Hate, like many things, comes from fear. This fear of the unknown, of people or places we know nothing about. What are their intentions and thoughts about us? One may think the worst possible thing first. When that curiosity is satiated not by truth, but by the twisted experiences of people who have an agenda, we start to form an image of the other, the entity we label as the enemy. I don't think anyone is exempt from being guilty of hating someone at some point in their life for a variety of reasons, whether it be based on a myriad of truth and morals. Hence, Mononoke is compelling as it is because Miyazaki tears down that shroud and removes the mirage we like to label things as such by treating these characters with simplistic virtues, but in doing so makes them more prone to nuance and change. Characters like Eboshi, who are attempting to make awful change through violent and destructive means, are not free from judgment or a sense of justice. Her death would mean the inability for her people to accept the god beasts as anything but monsters for killing their leader, but she can't return to them without suffering a loss. You see, the film is not trying to seek retribution for these actions, but more say what the cost of them are. For Eboshi, losing a limb and her life being saved by her enemies forces one to take stock more in what they have left. So like the lepers she cared for, who in some ways is closer to now through her condition, she finds something new to live for. By extension, the humans of Irontown have been given another chance for a great new prosperous life. But it's not for commerce or greed that they work to rebuild their home. This is the duality of conflict, that a group is more than the sum of its parts. Both can be harsh and both can be kind, yet most never wish to see both as true, because that isn't convenient, and it's not easy. But neither is life. I was never moved so much by moments of the film more than when the melancholic leper expresses that despite their conditions and past suffering, it is in suffering that we live life, that there will be conditions of our home that has been wrecked and destroyed, but somehow we must keep living. Moro said so of the forest spirit. He gives life and takes life away, to end the suffering of the animals in his domain and to destroy the very forest itself when the balance is upset. So it is within the spirit's nature to give life back when the forest is reborn anew. This is where both Nausicaa and many other man versus nature stories do not conclude their narratives the same way. Instead of one side defeating the other, or a mutual understanding happening once one side realizes their mistakes, Miyazaki's fantasy epic ends when the spirit of the forest's last moments destroy all structures and semblance of the previous land, wiping the slate clean of industry and the old forest. San is distraught by the loss of the forest god, but like the return of a single lonesome Kodama, perhaps a new one may flourish. A new story can begin, and with time the stage is set on a brighter future for both humankind and the earth beneath their feet. We can be scared and worried about what the future has in store for us, so I understand why many of us wish for and reside in comfort or convenient complacency. It's easier to say, I don't wish to know more about them. I don't want to try. I'm scared of what may happen if I open myself up to them. I had a conversation a couple weeks ago before I started this video with someone about watching movies. They said they don't watch much of anything new, but rather the same comfort shows or movies kind of on repeat. When I asked why, their answer was something akin to, knowing what's going to happen is less anxiety-inducing than not. An answer so befuddling to me, I couldn't comprehend it, and I began to start acting up like Homer from the Shining parody episode. Only by composing myself, I realized this is more of a commonality in how people interact with media nowadays. Art is now used as a thing to calm and comfort us, and help with the anxieties of mundane living. But I feel a sadness to this. To never venture and discover what other stories lie in wait for you is like going to the art gallery and only looking at the exact same painting every time while you shield your eyes from the others. I like any kind of film that has an effect on me so powerful that it makes me want to write as I do here, to say what I think it's conveying or at least express what it does for me. Watching a story I love but completely lost on how it will end, there's nothing else quite like it. So the uncertainty that we have to not want to look at art that may provoke, shock, or confront us is as clouding as not giving another person the same level of curiosity, especially when face to face on any degree. If we don't open ourselves to pain or suffering of what people or life has in store, then neither the new joys and surprises we never knew would arrive. Princess Mononoke's ending recounts what is said so well by Osa the leper. Life is suffering. It is hard. The world is cursed. But still, you find reasons to keep living. At the end of our 2-hour epic, there is change in our characters no matter how small. Each one in time, perhaps, can have a clearer perspective on those around them, with no clouds of hate upon one's eyes. Chico ends the film with a fair assessment of us who are hopeful that things can be different. You can't win against fools. Have a good one. Hi. Thank you so much for watching and making it to the end of the video. First off, I want to say a massive thank you to all of my patrons who support videos like these. Below in the description is a Discord you can join, but also the Patreon where you can support videos like these for $2 Australian. I was a bit hesitant to make a video on Princess Mononoke because, as I realized, there is so much to cover and there are so many great things that other people have both made videos about but also written books on. So I hope I gave you a new perspective on these things, or at least opened up a window to how deep this movie can go in its themes and the way it conveys them. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to give it a like and subscribe so it lets YouTube know you like my stuff, or by watching another one of these videos here. Thank you so much again. But that's all from me. My name is Mugen. As always, have a good one.